All right, so we are going to wrap up with the last session. Please take your time, fill out those questions. Those are super important to us, okay? So I welcome back up Jennifer, and she's going to come and close us out for the day. And Erwin, Jennifer and Erwin, come on.
We have made it this far with almost no PowerPoint. There's almost. But I just love a PowerPoint, so I promise it's good, but bear with me. Thank you for sticking it out all day. There's still so many of us here, so yay. I appreciate it. Thank you for staying. Erwin and I are going to be talking about partnerships, and particularly cross-sector partnerships. In my role with the Financial Empowerment Network, I work with all types of organizations, and what I have seen is sometimes there is confusion and mismatch when nonprofit partners and financial institution partners are working together. And so we wanted to spend some time talking about that. And then we're going to be doing an activity, a resource mapping, mind mapping activity at your tables to close out today. So that's the plan for the rest of the day. You haven't had a chance to introduce yourself. Erwin, please. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Erwin Reeves. I work for the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. I'm out of the San Francisco Regional Office. I cover the state of Washington, Oregon, and the Bay Area 12-county combined statistical area. How about now?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, and he gets the award for coming the farthest, I think. So thank you. We appreciate the partnership at the FDIC. Erwin's been involved with FEN longer than I have, so thank you. All right, so we want to start off with what seems basic, but I think it's really important to say these things out loud, and that is what makes a good partnership. If we have, I feel like today a theme that I'm hearing a lot of is that we got to work together. We all have a piece of the puzzle, but none of us can do it all on our own, and we have to work together. So if we're going to do that, what does that look like? So I have some thoughts, and I'm really interested to hear what everyone else thinks and kind of use this to talk more. I'm not an expert in partnerships by any means, but these are my observations that I want to share. The first thing that I think of when I think about partnering between organizations is that both organizations have to have a vision that is shared, but has flexibility as well. And that's really important because the two organizations partnering can't do the exact same thing, or else you don't need to partner, probably, right? So you're doing different things and coming at things from different angles. And so it's really important that there is a shared vision, but there's also flexibility within that. And at the same time, you have to be clear on what your non-negotiables are. Like sometimes there may be a partner that you can't work with or that you decide that you won't work with, and you've got to be clear on what would that look like. What is that line? When do you draw that line? And in that, the important thing is the alignment, right? There's got to be alignment in the goals, even if they're not exactly the same. I would also say investment in time to cultivate relationships. This is something that I see, that I don't always see that folks understand. Any partnership is like any relationship. It takes time to cultivate. And I hear from financial institutions, well, I hear from them when the grant applications open up, and then I don't hear from them for the rest of the year. And we're all busy, right? We're out there busy. But if we're not investing the time to communicate about what's happening, to share what we're doing, to share why we're busy and what we're doing, Just like in any relationship, the other person has no idea what's going on. If I don't text you for 6 months, they don't know. You don't know what's happening with me. And so it's that investment in cultivating relationships. And sometimes that looks, for nonprofit folks, let me speak, my background is all nonprofit. I've never worked in a financial institution in my life. Sometimes this cultivation of relationships looks really non-traditional. Sometimes it's going out to coffee. Sometimes it's walking into the bank branch and introducing yourself, right? It's not always gonna look the same way as our work looks all the time, but it's really an important part of partnerships.
I would agree with that. I think, as Jennifer said, you want to put the time in before you're needed. You don't want to walk in, hand out. It's better to create a relationship based on you having an understanding, or another individual or organization having an understanding of what you're doing. In addition to that, when you put in effort and show some dedicated time, it makes you a little more beholding. It's easier to create a relationship with someone when they're coming in and just trying to learn more about you. As an example, some of the things that I do is I really try and meet different organizations, but I ask them what they're looking for. I don't come in with my agenda. I've identified that they could potentially fit within my agenda because of the work that they do, but I'd rather find out more about what's going on with your organization so I can create alignment on my side. And if there's not an opportunity to collaborate, we can still be friends because I came to meet you. I didn't come in and say, hey, I need your reports for the last 6 months on what you've been doing with your organization, but rather, how are you doing? Are things going well? How are you working with the banks? Are the banks working with you? Versus, I need to know exactly everything that's going on. But then when I call you later on, since we've established a relationship, you're probably going to tell me anyway before I even ask the question, because we've built that bond. And so it's really important to put the time in.
All right, we're already behind schedule, so I'm going to keep going.
Okay.
All right. Communication, we've talked about this a little bit, but I just want to put out there the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. I cannot understate how important this is to make sure everyone is on the same page. The follow-up email with the notes about what you talked about, right? Because especially when you're working across sectors, you may think that you're both talking about the same thing, and you may be talking about very, very different things. And so there isn't too much communication. Partnerships need to meet the needs of everyone involved. Those are the best partnerships. I think of today as an example of that. We have 20 people on our planning team, not necessarily just because they, follow my directions and like what I'm doing, but because the Bank on Forum is important for what they're doing as well. And so that's why they've invested this time in putting all of this together, because it meets the needs for their work and for their constituents and their communities too. So finding those alignments where you're meeting the needs of everyone. There also has to be commitment from multiple levels in an organization. I've had the pleasure of working with organizations where leadership is very much on board with this new project, and then the staff that are tasked with it have no idea what's happening or why. And everyone's nodding their heads. So, and at the same time, if you've got folks that are really energetic and excited and motivated, but leadership doesn't understand why they're doing this thing, like what is financial empowerment, why are we doing this, how is it related to what we do, there's gonna be roadblocks. And so recognizing that you've really gotta be mindful of all the levels of an organization and getting that buy-in, and staff turnover, right? Like there is nonstop turnover, especially now, post-pandemic, but even before in all sectors. And so needing to really maintain those relationships.
So I think what I would add to that is, because there's staff turnover, if you establish kind of a routine where you're trying to reach out to your partners on a consistent and regular basis, you'll be able to find out about that turnover faster, but you'll also be able to implement things and say, hey, this is what we were doing before, and take that time to educate, as Jennifer was talking about. But it's very important to keep your hand on the pulse of what's taking place, whether it's in an industry, in a sector, or in a specific neighborhood or group that you're working with, especially when you see things changing rapidly.
All right, CRA. Who here knows what CRA means? If I say CRA.
If my bankers don't raise their hands, we got problems.
Those of us in the nonprofit world were like, it's just another acronym. What does this mean? So Erwin's going to tell us.
So CRA is the Community Reinvestment Act, and it's really, without going through the full history, comes out of redlining as a basis for housing insecurity, insufficiency, inequity, however you want to place it. And the law has evolved quite a bit since 1977. That said, it's made up now at this particular juncture. It will change in the future. We just don't know exactly when. But right now it's affordable housing, community services targeted towards low and moderate income individuals and communities. That includes businesses. And then specifically activities targeting small businesses and small farms, and then activities that revitalize and stabilize low and moderate income communities, geographies, distressed and underserved areas. One of the main things that happens across kind of each size of banks, there are basically 3 different thresholds of banks: small, intermediate, small, and large banks. Large banks are anything over $1.4 billion. Everything under that is considered a small bank. And you can imagine that smaller banks have less capacity, and so that's because they have smaller assets. The primary thing that I want you to take away from this is when you're looking at your partner and who you're going to work with, I'll take that, is that you want to make sure you're aligning yourself with a partner that you can work with. So if you're looking to approach a financial institution, and we never walk in and ask for CRA dollars, because we're not leading with money, we're leading with relationships. We never walk in and ask for CRA money. That's just doesn't help. But let's say the financial institution specializes in making small business loans. You run an affordable housing program, and you want to get loans for your potential borrowers. Is that initial bank the first bank you should go to? Because they're focused on small business loans. You have an affordable housing program. You want to find a financial institution that has a mortgage lending program, or they make home equity loans. They're somehow engaged in that, so you can create that partnership because you're aligning with their business needs. They now have a business tie to you because they can make mortgage loans, which help support their programs. If you have a commercial bank that's making small business loans, you can still go in and talk to them about financial education, talk to them about some other volunteer opportunities that can potentially align. But that loan request, that's not the right alignment. You always want to think about who your partner is and how you can help benefit them, as well as how they're going to help benefit you. We're almost out of time, so if there are any questions, I'm available to answer them, but just in a quick snippet, make sure you're aligning with the business line of the bank that you're talking to. Make sure that you have a real, and know what you want. Don't throw spaghetti against the wall. That is kind of the worst thing to do, because you're not showing a commitment to what your purpose is. Be very specific and be willing to start small so you can build that relationship over time.
I will just also add, for nonprofits, we know this, nonprofits and community-based organizations, we know this, but banks are not social services. They're business. And so also, you cannot necessarily lead with the important needs of a community, because while that is compelling and that is important, the CRA has specific guidance around what banks are looking to support. And that is low to moderate income communities. And so that's the vocabulary you got to be thinking about when you're approaching the financial institutions. You've got to be thinking about, can they get credit? And I don't know if they can get credit. If I have a question, I ask Erwin. We don't have to be the experts in that, but thinking about, in my work, I don't typically talk about the low to moderate income communities that we're working with. We talk about like marginalized communities. We talk about immigrants and refugees. We talk about justice-involved individuals. But when you're putting out an ask, you got to use the words low to moderate income communities, because that's what they're evaluated against. So just a little tip that I have learned. And because they are not social services, we may have similar goals, but they're also going to be different goals. And that's important to keep in mind. And that goes back to the alignment that I talked about. We may want a financial institution to open a checking account for somebody that maybe has not been able to get a checking account opened. And the financial institution wants to open an account because they are looking at potential business, right? This is a new customer. This is somebody that they can bring in. If they do well, maybe they're going to be interested in other products and services with the financial institution. That's not what the community-based organizations are thinking about, right? We're thinking about how can we save them money in how they're managing their finances? How can we help them improve their credit? How can we help them be safer while they're managing their money? Or we may think this person does not want or need a checking account, and perhaps it's not the right thing for them. And so sometimes our goals are not going to be the same, even though they're similarly aligned.
I do kind of want to backtrack just a little bit. Banking is transactional. Bankers are going to think about banking being transactional. Most of you work for community-based organizations. There's a lot of feeling and emotion engaged in that. Leave that at the office. Do your work. It's very important. But when you're preparing, as Jennifer was just talking about, using common language and vocabulary, it's very important to align with that. And let me say it like this. When you apply for grants at certain foundations and certain government organizations, you speak their language so you can get that money. Correct? Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't you do that in working with your bankers? So you want to make sure that you're lining that up from that standpoint. We just talked about the good feel. And there's a challenging relationship between banks and everybody else. Some people don't trust banks based on their historical experience, their lived experience. Bankers don't necessarily trust everybody. That's why they have risk models, and they do measurements on trying to test cash flow and making sure loans can be repaid. And it takes time to build that confidence back and forth. That's why you're going in before you need, so that you can start establishing that relationship, so that it can be meaningful, and that bankers do have heartstrings. They are buried very deep. I'm a former banker. I have a heart somewhere inside my body. I'm not sure where it is, but it's here. I know it's there. It's a matter of drawing that out. It's a matter of really creating without too much emotion and feelings, because you're talking to someone that's transactional. So you want to keep it kind of to those basics. And then the concept itself of banking, if you think about it, is an elitist concept. It's designed for people that have money. You're representing people that don't have money that are trying to participate in the system. So it's important to speak the language and trying to address them and to let them see what's happening, but also what you're bringing. What kind of business can you bring to help them meet their goals? It may seem immaterial, but most banks have goals around deposit gathering. If you're opening bank accounts, you're helping them meet that goal. It might not be the high dollar account that they want, but your client may become that high dollar, high value customer over time. One little story, and then I'll get off.
It's not me, it's Becky.
Becky, don't hurt me. I was a loan officer, and I just happened to be on the platform. Everybody else was at lunch, and I just picked up the phone because it was ringing. And there was a very upset woman on the other side of the phone. She was hot, and she was mad because she had been denied a loan from a larger financial institution. It wasn't that she was denied the loan, it was that she was told, what is she doing in construction as a woman? This is in the 80s. Let's okay, maybe the 90s. And I said, well, I can't deny a loan if I haven't seen any financial information. I said, do you have all the things that you need? Yes, this has been in business for this period of time. Will you give me the loan? I'm like, I can't do anything until I see the financial information. How much money do you want to borrow just in case? So I can just take some notes, be prepared for the conversation. She comes in with CPA prepared financial statements for the years and times that I asked her for. She had more money in her deposit account than she had for her loan request. Do you know how fast I got that loan approved? She went on to become one of my larger clients. Now, I'm a smaller loan officer at this particular time. As a, in value, I'm like an assistant vice president or something like that. I ended up lending her over $5 million 4 years later in one of her businesses, $2.5 million in her other business. Helped her construct a home, a third home, because she was getting government contracts and she was able to blow her business up. All of that from a $50,000 loan. So the bankers understand this piece. What I would like the community-based organizations to understand, that building relationship is very important. Don't go in too hot, but you can do that, but it takes time. And many times you're gonna have to repeat and tell your story, but it's very important that you align with someone that can meet your goals. Who, I don't know who that other loan officer was. To me, it didn't matter. I got what I needed to get done. She got what she needed to get done. And it got to the point that I was about to change jobs and start doing more community development, and another loan officer got that portfolio. And so there's growth opportunities available if you put the time in. Sometimes it's gonna take work. So, I'm sorry,
All right.
Becky.
We're going to move to the next part because we have talked too much
Exhausted.
at the end of the day. So we're done talking. We are going to do a resource mapping activity. Some folks may know this as mind mapping, and so that's what we're going to do. You have blank paper and markers on your table, and I'm going to give you quick instructions, and then I'm going to send you on your way. So I know we're excited, but hold on for 1 minute while I explain. So I'm going to have you all work on your resource map individually first. And in the center of your resource map is the community that your action squad has been focused on today, okay? Around that community, you are going to list what folks need to be financially, for financial well-being. That's what I'm trying to say. So what do folks need to achieve financial well-being and financial belonging? And then for each of those, you can do another layer outside of that bubble if you would like. Once your map is full, then you're going to shift and think about what is available now to that community. What do you do? What does your organization do? What do other organizations in your community do? Where are the gaps in available resources, and where are the opportunities for partnerships? What's missing? Where's the capacity? Okay, and then we're going to do some discussion at your table. We'll get back to that. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Okay, so for those of you who have never done resource or mind mapping before, I want to tell you a little bit about it. The first thing is, it helps people to think in a different and nonlinear way. Let me tell you, I love a bullet list so much. But if you look at this, this is an example of going from a bulleted list to a mind map. And it's much more engaging, and your brain is able to think more creatively when you are thinking in this way. Okay, next slide, please. So as I said, it taps into all of the creative juices that you have left in your brain at 4:30 on a Monday. There's all kinds of benefits around how it helps spark new thoughts. So this is just another example. If you notice, there's lots of colors. There's lots of, doesn't have to be words, it can be drawing. That is helpful as well. And next one, please. This one also shows sort of thinking about how you can do this in a way that's creative. That's why you've got markers, there's colors, draw pictures. That is all going to help your brain think about these things in new and different ways. Okay. Yes, images make it more visually engaging and are going to help you think about these things differently. So back to the instructions. You're going to work on it for 10 minutes, and then we're going to come together and discuss. So I'm going to leave these instructions up here for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to look at my watch. We're going to come back together. I'm actually going to give you 8 minutes because we're behind. Sorry, I'm cutting 2 minutes out. And then we're going to come back together in 8 minutes, and you're going to discuss at your tables, and I'll give you the next instructions, okay?